Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome back to another episode of the Saturdays in Stores podcast, which you can find right here on the Court Store Media Network. I'm your host, Kanaye. This episode is coming out to you guys early in the week on a Friday morning, just so I can touch base before UConn takes on the first round matchup against the Furman Paladins in the first round of the NCAA tournament. UConn on Selection Sunday was granted a 2 seed in the East region, which I was not all too sure it was going to be possible landing in the East with how everything was working out with bracketology and the people who put out their brackets leading up to Selection Sunday. Of course, this region, it's just a gauntlet when you consider the coaching names, the programs, and how they excelled this year that are in this region. Just to name a few, St. John's, which got to talk about that Big East Tournament Championship too on this podcast and how the Huskies did not look very good in that game. But in addition to the Johnnies, you have Michigan State, Duke, of course, who was the number one overall seed and barely snuck a close one out against Siena earlier this morning. In addition to that, there's Kansas, there's UCLA, who UConn might potentially face in the second round if they are able to cruise past the Paladins in this first round matchup, slated for tomorrow when I'm recording this on Thursday, March 19th. But a lot to get into in this episode. I do still want to try to keep it on the shorter end. But before we get into everything that I want to get to today, just a couple quick announcements. First, us here at the Court Store, and we've partnered with First Form Fitness Supplements to tell you about all the great products that they have to offer to help you keep up with an active lifestyle. Whether it's amino acids, protein powders, pre-workout, fitness apparel, they have what you might need. And if you're interested in seeing more of the great products that First Form has to offer, I'll be plugging the link to their full website in the description box below. On top of that, please engage with the content you see on this channel in any way you can, whether it's liking, subscribing, or just telling other people about the Court Storm. Everything goes a really, really long way with influencing the algorithm on YouTube, which of course is super, super important to getting more people to see our videos. Also, be sure to turn on your post notifications to your latest to see when our videos drop. So let's get right into it. I want to start first with the Big East Tournament Championship. Obviously, that was a really, really ugly game, and I'll be the first one to tail back to some of my wrong takes. And I had said on last week's episode that UConn's defense is good enough to never get ran out of the gym against anybody. And of course, that just was not the case in this game whatsoever. UConn lost 7-52 in Madison Square Garden this past Saturday night. And really just from the jump, UConn did not come out with the same level of aggression and energy that the Johnnies did. I think early in the game, St. John's spraying out to the kill shot, the 10-0 start that I really just felt, honestly, really kind of won them the game. I just felt that UConn was not expecting that punch, that blow. And once they took it, they never really were able to fully, I think, recollect themselves. Yes, there was a moment in the second half where they went on a run, but then that obviously got halted by some bad turnovers, some inadvertent missed shots, some bad missed assignments defensively, and just led to St. John's springing out to what was a 20-point win. Now, in this game, really the only guy who was able to get it going offensively was Terrace Reed. Terrace Reed finished with 17 points on 8 for 17 shooting overall. And now, while he was the leading scorer for the Huskies in this game, I do think that Terrace wasn't as effective as he could have been, like he was in Hartford when UConn won by 32 against the Johnnies in the return game of the season series. And I just think that Terrace Reed, he really favored going over his left shoulder when there was ample opportunities. I mean, Jim Jackson on the call, he said it numerous times throughout the game where Terrace Reed, he has Zuby Ejiofor all up on the left over his left shoulder. He could have easily spun to his right, laid it up with the left. There was one moment in the game where he finally went to that, was able to draw a foul. If he went to that more consistently throughout, then I think he could have gotten some more opportunities to be able to score and convert on some of the layups that he ended up missing when he was trying to go for the hook over his left shoulder. Now, on top of that, I do think that while Terrace Reed was really the only guy to get it going in the second half, UConn became very reliant on what Terrace Reed was doing offensively. And I just think a lot of that is attributed to none of the guys on the perimeter being able to get it going. I just think St. John's defended at such a high level. And you need to give so much credit to St. John's, to Rick Pitino, to the players in that program for how well they came out and defended and how much they wanted this game. I mean, they're the back-to-back regular season title holders in the Big East. They are the back-to-back Big East tournament champions. And I mean, listen, Zuby Ejiofor, he was just a complete game changer. And that's what he's been since he's gotten to St. John's. I mean, Zuby, just an incredible game. He had 18 points on super efficient shooting. He knocked down 2 threes, the 9 rebounds, the 3 steals he had, the 7 blocks, just time and time again. I think the one that stuck out to me the most was when he blocked Silas Demery when Silas was coming down the lane, and obviously that led to Silas getting hurt, which is something I'll touch on in a second. Both him and Bryce Hopkins, I felt just had a stellar game, and Hopkins was really able to get what he wanted going towards the basket. He was able to connect on a couple threes as well. They got to the line. I will say the free throw disparity in this game was not what I expected it to be. UConn actually stayed pretty close behind St. John's. I think St. John's shot 17 free throws on Saturday night, and UConn got to the line 14 times and actually converted on most of their attempts. So congrats to Terrace on that for finally making some more of his free throws. Silas also got to the line as well. But really, it just comes down to the defensive job that Johnny's did on the perimeter, where just the length, the physicality, the athleticism, it really, I think, disrupted and it really bothered Braylon Mullins. Like we saw in that first matchup at MSG earlier this season, solo ball could obviously not get it going. I felt like there were some really good looks he had that he just was not able to make. Same thing goes for Alex Caravan. And I mean, people want to point to AK and said he had rough games, but I think again, how many times have I said on this podcast where AK's at his ceiling when other guys are playing to their ceiling, and there's other options in front of him. He's not a guy that you can look to really carry the load of being the go-to guy in the scoring wise and shouldering all the offensive responsibilities. And Silas Demery, I still think, was hesitant to look to take over, to look to try to create his own shot. And that's something that at this point in the season, with how poorly the shooters who are supposed to be great shooters this year have not shot the basketball, I think Silas needs to look to take over much earlier in the games. And obviously he never just really got it going. And of course he exited the game multiple times with what appeared to be an ankle or a calf, a leg injury of some sort. And as of right now, I guess I might as well touch on the injury stuff. Silas and Jalen Stewart are both listed questionable for their game against Furman today when you guys are seeing this on Friday. So that's obviously something that you hope clears up. You hope both Silas and Stewie are ready to go for the NCAA tournament, just because I mean, I'm out on UConn if Silas is not playing. If he's going to be out for an extended amount of time, I think UConn could get past Furman without Silas. It's obviously going to be a lot tougher, but going forward, I just don't believe in this UConn team if Silas is not on the floor and playing. Stewie, of course, I just think you need to get him back. You need to get more scoring off your bench. The bench really struggled against St. John's. Eric Ribe was not terrible. I actually think he had a valiant effort in the minutes where Terrace Reed was in foul trouble and needed to sit an extended amount of time. Malachi Smith had one good take to the basket when he did come in for Silas Demery, something that I thought was maybe going to spark a run from UConn. It unfortunately did not go on to become that. Jaden Ross, I felt was good in this game. I did think he had one costly turnover. He did, I think, have one kind of he forced up a shot. I think it was a layup when he was going to the basket that maybe just wasn't a great take. But Jaden Ross, I felt that of everyone on the team, he played with the most energy and passion. And honestly, going forward, I might kind of be in the boat where I feel Jaden Ross in the starting lineup gives UConn the best chance to win going forward in the NCAA tournament. I just think that with Solo and Mullins struggling the way they have recently, I know Mullins did have the big game against Georgetown in the second round of the Big East tournament, but still, when you're playing teams with this level of size, physicality, and athleticism, it's so much harder for Solo and Mullins to both get going. And when you're not getting anything from them offensively, and they're both at times liabilities on the defensive end of the floor, I just think Jaden Ross gives you a little bit more certainty and comfort in being able to get stops. Of course, Jaden Ross is arguably the best defender on this team. At least he has been over the last 2-3 week sample size. Silas, of course, still is probably the point of attack defender on this team. But having a guy next to him who can also defend at as high of a level or maybe even a higher level in Jaden Ross, and when he's knocking down the three-point shot consistently the way he has been over the last couple games now, I think that might be something that Hurley and the staff should look to do going forward. Of course, the coaching staff, they know much better than I do, and I trust their intuition. I trust their decisions that they make. But, maybe that's something we see as we move forward, or hopefully move forward in the NCAA tournament. Now, really, I think that pretty much takes care of everything I had to say regarding the St. John's UConn Big East Tournament Championship game. I think it just came down to the turnovers, the lack of toughness. Defensively, you got beat. I mean, Alex Caravan, for someone who's a redshirt senior, been with the program for 9 semesters, when you consider he graduated high school early, some of the turnovers he made inbounding the ball against the press were just really sloppy, and it's something you hope we don't see going forward. UConn cannot make shots. And that's been a major two things that have been major themes the entire year, between the turnovers and just the lack of shot making from the guys that were supposed to be able to make shots. Now, that being said, I think I speak for all of Husky Nation when I say that the conclusion of this game it felt like the world was probably falling down in STORRS. And I think UConn really did luck out with their draw in the NCAA tournament. Now, I did mention at the start, the East is a complete gauntlet. But with the coaching names you have in there, with the amount of wins that these programs have accumulated throughout the year, with the moments they've had, with the potential Final Four candidates in this region, it's loaded. And let me tell you right here, right now, whoever comes out of this East region, no matter who it is, I hate Duke. And if you guys have kept up with the Core Storm podcast, you guys know I am not a fan of Duke whatsoever. I was really praying Siena would have closed that game out today. But nonetheless, whoever comes out of this region, even if it is Duke, is going to be so deserving of making it to Indianapolis and playing in the Final Four, because this is a gauntlet. I'd argue this is one of, I mean, some people have even called it the toughest region in NCAA tournament history. And I mean, I can understand arguments for that. I think there have been probably past years that were maybe as tough, if not tougher. But nonetheless, there's no way to get around saying that this region in the East this year is a absolute gauntlet. If UConn is able to win against Furman, they're going to play the winner of UCF and UCLA. Now, following the Big East Tournament Championship game, as I mentioned, I did not feel very hot about the Huskies, and I would not have been surprised if they lost in the first weekend in the second round. Now, of course, Furman is not a team to look past. Furman has some really talented players. I mean, Alex Wilkins, I think, jumps out immediately. Reminds me a little bit in ways of Tristan Newton, 6'5" guy with a little bit of a slighter, skinnier frame. But he's a guy who can score the ball. He can pass well. Really hoping that Silas is ready to go for this game and he's fully healthy, because I do think that Silas is physical. The way he can impose himself physically on other guys is really going to help him, is really going to help the team overall defensively in handling Alex Wilkins. If Malachi Smith is on the floor, that's obviously puts UConn a little bit of a height disadvantage in the backcourt, respective to what Furman is going to be rolling out. Asa Thomas has shot the ball incredibly this year. I think he's up to close around 40% from three on the year. And Cooper Bowser, I mean, he's been one of the better big men that you'll find across the mid-majors this year. He's averaging, I believe, close to a double-double. If I'm not mistaken, he is a double-double threat nonetheless every time he steps on the floor. Alex Wilkins, Cooper Bowser, Asa Thomas, those are three guys that are totally capable, that if they're on, they can go on to beat this Husky team this year. And when you really consider how UConn has played down to their competition this year and really let a lot of lesser teams, eventually come away with wins like we saw against Creighton and Marquette, as well as just keep it close. So we saw how UConn was, challenged every game in Big East play this year, with really just not all too many blowout wins that we kind of got used to when Hurley was going on the back-to-back championship runs 2 years ago now. So listen, this Furman game is not something to look past. UConn, if you look on paper, UConn should win this game, but I'm not looking past Furman. I'm not looking past the Paladins. I think there's a real possibility that if UConn does not come out ready, they don't come out prepared, then they could, they get their ass kicked. They could lose this game and they could go home as in what would be a very bad look for the program, getting upset by a 15 seed. Now, again, if they are able to win, they would face the winner of UCF and UCLA. Now, these are two teams that have played some of the top flight programs around the country very tough in the respective conferences between the Big 12 for UCF and the Big 10 for UCLA. That being said, I do feel that both those teams don't do too much to force turnovers, which is something that UConn has struggled against this year, playing teams that look to force turnovers as much as possible, like in Arizona, like a St. John's. And I do think that they don't physically outmatch UConn the way some other teams have this year, like, again, Arizona and St. John's. Now, a lot of this is pending on the availability of Silas Demery Jr. and Jalen Stewart. And just because, I don't know that I trust anyone outside of Silas and being able to handle the responsibilities of running the point right now for UConn to be able to reach their ceiling of what I believe is a Final Four. Now, again, I think UConn really lucked out with this draw. I think these games against Furman and the winner of UCF and UCLA are very winnable, but they can't play around with their food the way they have this entire season. They need to come out and just play with tenacity, need to play with passion. I mean, these are guys are playing with their college basketball careers on the line here. Terrace Reed Jr., Alex Caravan. I mean, they're both seniors. Malachi Smith. These are some of the last games they'll be playing in their collegiate careers. And I mean, who knows what's in store for them afterwards. But I mean, to let a damn near 30-win season go to waste in the first weekend, I just don't think would sit right with these guys. And I really do hope that deep down they are prepared. And I'm sure Hurley, I'm sure the coaching staff, they're putting their guys through the grinder and getting them ready for what is going to hopefully be a deep, deep tournament run this year. Because listen, this East region, it's loaded. Like I've said so many times now, but there's a way for UConn to get to Indianapolis. I really do deep down believe that. You look at Duke; they look vulnerable without Caleb Foster and Pat Gungba. Obviously got taken down to the wire against 16 seed Siena. St. John's, I obviously think, has their faults where they could get picked off by one of these out of conference teams, as they normally do tend to struggle against out of conference opponents, like we saw in the tournament last year when they lost to Arkansas in the second round, as well as in their out of conference play this year at the beginning of the season. Michigan State, of course, has their shooting faults. That is someone that UConn could potentially see down the line in the second weekend if UConn makes it past their games today when you guys are seeing this video, and on Sunday. And I mean, Kansas, Kansas St. John's, they're gonna have to play each other in the second round, and that should be a hell of a game. And then they're one of those guys are gonna have to play Duke again. One of those teams could pick off Duke. I think a nightmare scenario is where you kind of has to play St. John's for a fourth time. And let me say, it's absolute BS that the NCAA selection committee put the top two teams in the Big East in the same region. It's very clear that there is some sort of agenda against the Big East. I think that's been pretty apparent over the last couple of seasons now that it's been this way, and I've never seen that before, where the top two teams in a singular conference end up in the same region. And again, that's the nightmare scenario for UConn. I think at this point, it's probably fair to say St. John's is the better team than UConn right now, with how they've played respectively over the last month and a half, 2 months now. And it's beginning to look more and more like that 32-point route where St. John's only put up 40 points in Hartford seems more and more like an anomaly. But anyways, I think that pretty much wraps up everything that I wanted to get to on this episode. Of course, fingers crossed that the Huskies are able to pull this one out without it being too dicey, too worrying of any real upsets. But again, I don't think this Furman team is anyone to play with, and hopefully we get a Husky win on Friday night. Now, following this game, I do look to hope to get a recap out on Saturday morning for you guys before their game on Sunday against. Well, I mean, if they are still in the tournament, they are playing a game on Sunday against the winner of UCF and UCLA. But again, hope for a Husky win. Let's get to Indianapolis, go get number 7. But until the next episode, see you all next time.